Today we're going to find out which one of these ribs is better. Marinated ribs versus classic barbecue ribs.
A big thanks to Napoleon Grills for sponsoring this episode.
Alright, now this is an experiment that I'm looking forward to making because in the Netherlands we go to a lot of restaurants that have ribs on the menu and they're all marinated. But the problem is they boil them in the marinade until they're done and then they just throw them on the grill and say these are barbecue ribs. Now personally I have a little bit of a problem with that. Mainly because it just doesn't taste good. However, the whole marinating concept of ribs could still be interesting. And therefore I want to try and figure out if marinated ribs are better or that we just need to stick with our regular barbecue ribs. So I went to the butcher, asked him for 2 racks of ribs, and these are my favorite baby back ribs with loads of meat on them. Now one we're going to leave as is, and the other one we're going to marinate. To make this a fair contest, I'm going to use PitmasterX pork rub for both of the ribs. That's right, I'm going to use this on the classic barbecue ribs and I'm also going to use it for a marinade. And you might not know this, but all the PitmasterX seasoning have a label, and on the back of that label it says how to brine with it and how to marinate with it. And in this case it says we're going to need 4 tablespoons of the PitmasterX pork seasoning together with a plant-based oil. That's going to be half a cup. First finish the open one. I'm going to put 4 tablespoons of this in, and then I'm going to use sunflower oil because it's really a light natural oil, and this is going to be my marinade. And you got 2 types of marinade. One is oil based and one is acidity based, so like a vinegar or a lemon juice or something like that. And this is an oil based marinade. I'm going to take a Ziploc bag like this, and to that I'm going to add the marinade. Close the Ziploc bag, leave it a little bit open, and then I'm going to push out all the air. There we go. At the last moment I'm going to zip it up. Look at that, that is well covered. I'm going to put both of the ribs back in the fridge and we're going to see these ribs tomorrow. Because what is better than 4 hours of marinating? That's right, 24 hours of marinating. See, I'm a smart guy. I'm so smart. Can't believe I was. All right, let's pull the ribs out. You instantly see that there's a lot of juices at the bottom of the bag. Those juices come from the ribs. So actually the marinade draws some of the moisture out of the ribs. But if you take a look at them, they actually look really, really good. And if you could smell this, you'd think we'll be eating really, really well today. They look so good. And you can see that it's nice and marinated all through the meat. The meat actually became a little bit more tender to the touch. That is good. I like this. Now let's do a side-by-side comparison to our not marinated ribs. Now let's get the membranes off the back of the ribs. Big back ribs like these, I'm just going to use a dinner knife and just stick it underneath. Wiggle my fingers under and then pull it up. Look, clean ribs, all prepared. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with the marinade, and I could have done it yesterday. In the end, it shouldn't matter because it marinated for 24 hours and that's enough time to go through the meat with that amount. But still, if you look at it, I think I should have done it yesterday. I'm just going to give it a quick touch up with some seasoning. I'm not going to season the other side because that's going to overpower things. Now we're going to do this rack of ribs. We're going to treat these as ordinary baby back ribs. Of course, we're going to make them as delicious as humanly possible. But I'm not going to pull any crazy stunts. See how thick these are? Insane. That is so thick. You're going to need seasoning on all sides. All sides. Top, side, bottom. There we go. All seasoned up. And the amount that you want to put on is that you can still see the meat, but it's all gotten a nice little coat of color. That's more than enough seasoning with the PitmasterX pork seasoning. Now this is ready for our barbecue. I'm just going to let these sit on the countertop. In the meantime, I'm going to fire up my Napoleon kettle grill. I'm going to set it up with the brick method, which means I'm just going to put in 2 bricks. Put the Napoleon charcoal briquettes behind that, and that's going to prevent radiation heat hitting the ribs. And of course I'm putting on 2 chunks of PitmasterX smoke wood. In this case I'll be using beech. And then it's going to slowly burn from one side to the other side, keeping the barbecue at a low temperature. The coals are lit up, it's now time to put the ribs on, and I'm going to put them on with the thickest part pointing towards the hottest part of the grill. This one is a little bit bigger. I'm going to put the biggest one closest to the fire, because naturally that would take the longest to cook. This vibrant red one is the one that we just sprinkled, and the darker one is the one that we marinated. So super curious. You can't tell by the color what it's going to taste like. I'm going to leave the top vent all the way open, and the bottom vent I'm going to set to the #1 position. And then with this setup, that's going to bring me to a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius smoking temperature. And if I need to, and I want to cool it down or slow it down a little bit, I'm just going to close the top vent, and that will stabilize. The ribs have been on for 2 hours, and I really like their color. That means I'm going to check with my thermometer to see where we're at. 74, 72, 72, which is exactly the temperature that I normally use. 70 degrees core temperature and the indication of good color on the outside of my ribs means it's time to wrap these up. They got the flavor because meat doesn't take on smoke flavor after 70 degrees Celsius. You're just going to pack it on, and besides that, we got a beautiful color. So these are not going to look any better. And that means I can now start focusing on cooking the ribs instead of making them look good and making them taste good. We now want them to be juicy and tender. First, let's take off the ribs. Oh, they look so good. The ribs that we've been cooking with just a sprinkle of barbecue seasoning like I normally would. I'll be putting on a little bit of honey, and I'll be putting everything on to the back. Just a drizzle of honey. A little bit of sugar, a little bit of butter. There we go. Now I'm just going to wrap these up onto the marinated ribs. Sprinkle on a little bit of honey, a little bit of sugar. Wrap them up. And these are both now ready to go back on the barbecue. Now I'm just going to let it run as is. The smoke wood is almost gone, so you need to check the charcoal though. Drop in a few more Napoleon briquettes. Close the grill grates, close the lid, leave the top vent where it is, check the bottom vent. Absolutely perfect. We can now continue with our experiment. It only took an hour and a half to get them up there, which was a little quicker than I expected. And normally I'd like to have them at 92 degrees Celsius, but they overshot. We're currently at 94, and I'm a little bit scared that they might even go up to 98, which is fall apart tender. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open this up. I'm going to let the ribs breathe a little bit so some of the heat can come out, and hopefully they're not gonna fall apart on us. Wow. Whoa, these are the marinated ribs. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, a little bit of those juices. Look at that. And they look really fantastic. Oh yeah. I'm gonna give these a little bit of time to relax and to let the juices flow back. And really the juices are the fat that sits inside these ribs, because most of the moisture has been pushed out, and we're replacing it with rendered down fat, and hopefully it's going to be really good. Now this is going to take up to about 15 to 20 minutes for them to rest. Then they also go down in temperature, which will make them a lot more enjoyable to handle and to eat. Now, I'm gonna first slice into the marinated ribs, and they look freaking delicious. Choose my angle, slice them. Whoa, look at that. Nice smoke ring, juicy meat. I don't think you can tell actually that it's been marinated by the color, but on the one that we didn't marinate, wow. That is some really tasty looking ribs. For the taste test, of course, I'm using this as a reference. Incredibly tasty. And the funny thing is, I was just in time to catch it. It's still full of the bone, but not completely full of the bone. But of course, that's all personal preference. If you I like it full of the bone. Then just keep on cooking. To me, if they have a little bite, I like that. These look good, really, really good, the marinade. I don't see any color difference, so this is a really tough choice because there's not much difference in flavor. So the marinade isn't like super powerful in flavor. You don't have this experience of, whoa, there's a big difference. The only difference that I really enjoyed was that bite on the outside of the marinated ribs, but nowhere near enough for me to say that the marinated ribs are better. Of course, you can season them, leave them overnight, it's like a dry brine, and you would basically get somewhat of a similar effect. However, I had some moisture loss on the marinated ribs when we took them out of the bag, remember? Well, I can honestly say that I can't taste the difference in moisture loss between these ribs. I can't say that the marinated ribs are less juicy. And that's probably because during the cook you lose so much moisture. The juiciness is probably more determined by the amount of fat and the time that it rested than the juices that were in the ribs. So final conclusion here, I'm gonna say that the difference is not big enough to say the marinade's better. Did I enjoy the marinade a little bit better? Yes, I did, but don't tell anyone. I enjoyed it a little bit better, but I don't want to marinate every time 24 hours. Just sprinkling on the seasoning before cooking is just a little bit easier. Therefore, I'll just keep on sprinkling probably. I'm not going to do the marinade thing again. But hey, let me know your favorite way to marinate the ribs or treat them up front, because I know there's a lot of people that like to season them a day ahead of time. Let me know down below. Oh, don't forget to pick up one of these in our new web shop, shop.pitmasterx.com.